on Christmas Eve. A blizzard locked down Denver International Airport. Silas Corbin carried his 7-year-old son Finn through the crowded terminal, searching for warmth. The boy coughed against his father's chest, his small body trembling. They wandered into the executive lounge, where every seat seemed taken except one beside a woman sitting alone beneath a towering Christmas tree. Silas approached her, his voice barely above a whisper. "May my child sit here?" She looked up, Seraphina Waverly, the billionaire. Around them, passengers filmed on their phones, murmuring about beggars. Security moved closer. Seraphina's eyes fell to the tattoo on Silas's wrist, and her expression shifted. She rose. "Stop. They're coming with me. My Christmas needs them." The announcement system crackled overhead, another cancellation echoing through the terminal like a death sentence for holiday plans. Snow hammered against the massive windows, turning the outside world into a wall of swirling white. Travelers sprawled across every available surface, some sleeping on luggage, others arguing with gate agents, children crying from exhaustion and disappointment. The ordinary waiting areas had become refugee camps of frustrated humanity. Silas Corbin moved through this chaos like a ghost, invisible to the crowds around him. His jacket had seen better days, the elbows worn thin, and his boots left wet prints on the polished floor. In his arms, Finn pressed his face against his father's shoulder, each cough sending a shudder through his small frame. The boy's forehead burned with fever, his breathing shallow and labored. In Silas's pocket, a pharmacy receipt showed the last of his money spent on fever reducers and an inhaler for his son. There would be no hotel room tonight, no warm bed, no Christmas morning surprises. There would only be survival, the same way it had been for the past 3 years since Maria died. Finn lifted his head slightly, his red-rimmed eyes catching the glow of Christmas lights strung along the terminal ceiling. "Dad," he whispered, his voice hoarse. "Are we going to make it home?" Silas tightened his grip on his son. "I'm going to try, buddy. I promise I'm going to try." But his face told a different story, the truth of a father who had no more cards to play. The executive lounge appeared through frosted glass doors like an oasis in the desert. Warm light spilled from within, and Silas could see plush chairs, a crackling fireplace display, and space precious. Empty space where his son might breathe easier. He didn't belong there. He knew that. But Finn's coughing had grown worse, and desperation had a way of erasing social boundaries. Inside, the lounge felt like another world. The air smelled of pine and expensive coffee. Soft holiday music played beneath the hum of quiet conversation. Business travelers worked on laptops, couples sipped wine, and everyone moved with the unhurried confidence of people who had never wondered where their next meal would come from. Near the back, beneath an enormous Christmas tree decorated with silver and gold, a woman sat alone. A cup of cocoa rested untouched beside her, steam no longer rising from its surface. She stared at nothing, her elegant features carved from ice, her eyes holding a distance that suggested she was somewhere far away from this airport, this holiday, this life. Her phone buzzed repeatedly on the armrest. She silenced it without looking. Beside her, a younger woman with a tablet and an anxious expression leaned in. "Ms. Waverly, the board is asking about the morning meeting. Clinton says it's urgent." Seraphina Waverly didn't turn her head. "Everything is urgent to Clinton. Tell him I'll deal with it after Christmas." "But after Christmas, Irene." Irene Shaw pressed her lips together and retreated, her fingers already flying across her tablet screen. Silas approached slowly, aware of every eye that turned toward him. His worn clothes marked him as clearly as a brand. He felt the judgment before anyone spoke, the slight shifting of bodies, the protective gathering of belongings, the subtle disgust that the privileged reserved for those who reminded them of life's fragility. George Holt, the lounge manager, materialized at his elbow like a bad dream. "Sir, this is a members-only lounge. I'm going to have to ask you to leave. I just need a place for my son to rest. He's sick. Please. There are public waiting areas throughout the terminal. I'm sure you can find somewhere more appropriate." From a nearby leather chair, a man in a cashmere coat laughed without humor. Otis Harrington set down his scotch and shook his head. "Christmas Eve, and we've got people bringing their kids in here for sympathy performances. What's next? A GoFundMe." Silas felt his face burn, but he swallowed the anger. Fighting would only make things worse for Finn. Instead, he moved past George Holt, past Otis Harrington's smirk, toward the only empty seat in the lounge, the one beside the woman under the Christmas tree. He stopped in front of her, his son still pressed against his chest. "Excuse me, may my child sit here just until he catches his breath?" Seraphina looked up, her distant gaze focusing for the first time since Silas had entered the lounge. Her eyes moved from his face to Finn's flushed cheeks to the desperate way Silas held his son, not like a prop for sympathy, but like a treasure he was terrified of losing. Then her gaze dropped to his hands, to the wrist exposed where his jacket sleeve had pulled back as he adjusted his grip on Finn. The tattoo there was small, a stylized symbol that meant nothing to most people. Wings over crossed tools, a number sequence beneath. A unit designation from another life. Seraphina's face went pale. Her hand trembled slightly as she set it against the armrest. "Ms. Waverly." Irene stepped forward, concern replacing irritation. "Are you all right?" George Holt arrived with security flanking him. "Sir, I won't ask again. You need to leave now, or we'll have you escorted out." The security guards moved closer, around the lounge. Phones were raised, recording the confrontation. Someone muttered about calling the police. Otis Harrington watched with undisguised amusement, waiting for the poor man and his coughing child to be thrown out into the storm. Seraphina stood. The movement was sudden enough to freeze everyone in place. She wasn't tall, but something in the way she carried herself made her seem to tower over the room. "Stop!" Her voice cut through the murmurs like a blade. "These two are with me." George Holt's mouth opened and closed. "Miss Waverly, with all due respect." "Did I stutter? George, they're with me, and we're leaving." She turned to Silas, and something flickered in her eyes, recognition, pain. Questions she wasn't ready to ask. "Both of you, you're spending Christmas with me." Irene grabbed Seraphina's arm. "You can't be serious. One wrong angle on those videos and this becomes a PR nightmare. Let me handle it. We can put them up in a hotel. Send some gifts. Make this go away." Seraphina pulled her arm free. "I don't want it to go away. Irene, I want them to come with me." Silas stood frozen, Finn growing heavier in his arms with each passing second. He didn't understand what was happening. Why this woman was looking at him like he held answers to questions she'd been asking for years. "Lady, I appreciate the offer, but I don't need charity. I just needed a place for my son." "This isn't charity." Seraphina's voice softened, but her eyes remained fixed on that tattoo. "I need someone I can trust tonight, someone who doesn't belong to my world, and something tells me you might understand why." Before Silas could respond, a figure emerged from near the entrance. Bernie Maddox moved like a man who had spent decades assessing threats' military bearing. Watchful eyes, hands that stayed loose and ready at his sides. He was Seraphina's head of security, and he studied Silas with the cold efficiency of a scanner. "Name," Bernie said, not a question. "Silas Corbin." Reason for being in Denver. Connecting flight. We were going home to Michigan. Storm canceled everything. Bernie's gaze dropped to the tattoo, lingering there longer than it had on anything else. His expression didn't change, but something shifted behind his eyes. Finn coughed again, a wet, rattling sound that made Silas's heart clench. Please, whatever this is, whatever you want, can we just let my son breathe first? Bernie watched Silas adjust his hold on the boy, supporting his back, keeping his airway clear. The gesture was practiced, automatic, the kind of thing you learned in medical training or in emergencies that demanded you know how to keep someone alive. Fine, Bernie said finally. We move now. Back entrance. Avoid the crowds. The next few minutes blurred together. Bernie coordinated with lounge staff through curt commands. Irene fielded calls and texts, her face growing paler with each one. Clinton keeps asking where you are. She told Seraphina. He's not going to let this go. Clinton can wait. They moved through service corridors Silas hadn't known existed, past storage rooms and utility closets until they emerged into an underground parking structure where a black SUV waited with its engine running. Silas's phone buzzed in his pocket. He ignored it until they were in the vehicle. Finn settled against his side with a blanket someone had produced from somewhere. Then he glanced at the screen. The message was from an unknown number. You still have it, don't you? Don't let them take it. His blood ran cold. He looked up to find Seraphina watching him. You're running from someone, she said quietly. Who? Silas thought of the canvas bag buried at the bottom of his backpack, the USB drive sewn into its lining. He thought of the promises he'd made and the secrets he'd kept for far too long. I'm running from the truth, he said. A truth that could destroy us both. The SUV wound through mountain roads as the storm raged outside. When they finally arrived at Seraphina's lodge, Silas understood for the first time how different their worlds truly were. The property sprawled across a snow-covered hillside like something from a winter fairy tale. A Christmas tree visible through floor-to-ceiling windows had to be 30 feet tall, its lights casting a warm glow across the fresh powder outside. Inside, a massive stone fireplace crackled with real flames. The smell of pine and cinnamon filled rooms that could have housed a dozen families. Finn's eyes went wide as they entered, his fever momentarily forgotten in the face of such overwhelming beauty. He spotted a pile of wrapped presents beneath the tree, and his hand tightened on his father's. Dad, he whispered. This is like the movies. I know, buddy. Seraphina watched the boy's wonder with an expression that seemed caught between pleasure and pain. The guest suite is upstairs. There's a nebulizer if he needs it, and the kitchen is stocked with everything for chicken soup. Silas shook his head. I appreciate this, but we shouldn't stay. Whatever's going on with you, we don't want to be in the middle of it. You're already in the middle of it. Seraphina's voice hardened. The moment you walked into that lounge with that tattoo on your wrist, you became part of this whether you wanted to or not. Before she could explain. Her phone rang. She glanced at the screen and her jaw tightened. I need to take this. She moved toward a private study, but not before Silas heard her answer. Clinton, what do you want? The name meant nothing to Silas, but the way Seraphina said it like a curse, like a warning, told him everything he needed to know. Bernie appeared at his elbow. I'll show you to your room. The boy needs rest. Upstairs, in a suite larger than the apartment Silas and Finn called home. They finally stopped moving. Silas set up the nebulizer, mixed the medication, and held the mask gently over Finn's face while the machine hummed its healing breath. Dad. Finn's voice was muffled by the mask. Is the pretty lady sad? Silas smoothed his son's hair back from his damp forehead. I think so. Buddy, sometimes rich people are sad too. Maybe we can make her feel better for Christmas. The innocence of the statement hit Silas like a physical blow. Here they were, homeless for the night, his son sick and feverish. Their lives upended by forces Silas still didn't fully understand, and Finn was worried about making a stranger feel better. "Maybe we can," Silas whispered. "Now rest." He waited until Finn's breathing steadied into sleep before he checked his backpack. The canvas bag was still there, but the zipper had been disturbed. Someone had tried to access it at the airport. During the chaos of their departure, in the few moments Silas had been distracted, they knew he was here. They knew what he carried, and it was only a matter of time before they came for it. Later that night, the power flickered. Silas was on his feet before the lights finished dying, his body responding to years of training he'd tried to forget. He moved to Finn's bedside, confirmed his son was still breathing, then positioned himself between the door and the bed. The backup generators kicked in after 3 seconds, but those 3 seconds stretched like hours. In the darkness, Silas heard movement footsteps where there shouldn't be any, the soft click of a door that should have been locked. He found Finn's hand in the darkness. "Remember what I told you. If you say stand behind, I stand behind. If you say quiet, I bite my lip, but don't cry. That's my boy." The lights came back up, dim and orange on emergency power. Silas eased the door open and listened. Somewhere below, voices, Bernie's sharp commands, the scramble of security personnel. Then he saw it, a shadow at the end of the hallway, moving away from him, not toward the master suite where Seraphina slept, not toward the vault where her valuables would be stored, toward the room where Silas had left his backpack. He moved without thinking, years of training taking over. The intruder was fast, but Silas knew these kinds of men had worked alongside them, had been one of them in another life. He caught up at the service stairs, grabbed the man's jacket, felt the resistance of a body trained to fight. They struggled in silence, neither willing to make noise that might escalate the situation. The intruder landed a blow to Silas's ribs that sent fire through his chest. But Silas held on, twisted, used the man's momentum against him. Bernie appeared at the bottom of the stairs with 2 security guards. The intruder broke free and ran, disappearing through a window that had been forced open from outside. "You all right?" Bernie asked, not moving to help. Silas pressed a hand to his ribs. "He wasn't here for money. He wasn't even here for her." "I know." Bernie's eyes held a new respect. "He was here for you, for whatever you're carrying." "How did you—" "Because I've been watching you since the airport. The way you move, the way you notice things, the way you positioned yourself when the power went out. You're not just some down-on-his-luck father. Corbin, you're something else." Silas leaned against the wall, exhaustion crashing over him. "I used to be something else. Now I'm just a guy trying to keep his son alive. And the evidence in your bag." Silas met Bernie's gaze. "That's trying to keep a lot more people than my son alive." They found Seraphina in the kitchen, making hot chocolate with hands that trembled slightly. Finn had woken during the commotion and now sat wrapped in a blanket at the massive island, watching her with curious eyes. "The man who broke in," Seraphina said without turning around. "He wasn't a thief." "No." "He came for what you're carrying." "Yes." She finally turned, and Silas saw that she'd been crying. The perfect mask of the billionaire had cracked, revealing something raw and wounded beneath. "That tattoo on your wrist," she said. "I've seen it before, on someone I loved." Silas felt the weight of the moment settle over him. He'd known this conversation was coming from the instant she'd looked at his arm in the airport. He'd just hoped he'd have more time. "His name was Leon Waverly," she continued. My brother. He died 4 years ago in what they called an industrial accident. I know. Her breath caught. You knew him. We worked together. Same unit, same project. Silas pulled up a chair across from her, keeping his voice low so Finn wouldn't hear. I was there the day he died. Seraphina's hands clenched on the counter. They told me it was equipment failure, faulty safety systems, a tragic accident that could have been prevented with better maintenance. That's what they told everyone. But that's not what happened. Silas shook his head slowly. The safety systems didn't fail. They were deliberately compromised. The maintenance logs were altered after the fact to cover up the real cause. Which was cost-cutting. Someone decided that proper safety protocols were too expensive, that the profit margins mattered more than people's lives. When things went wrong, they needed a scapegoat. Silas's voice caught. Leon found out. He was going to expose everything. He called me the night before, said if anything happened to him, I needed to tell the truth. Finn looked up from his hot chocolate. Dad, why is the lady crying? Seraphina wiped her eyes quickly. Because your father knew someone I loved very much. Sweetheart. And he's helping me understand what happened to him. Oh. Finn considered this with the grave seriousness of childhood. My mom died too. Dad says she's watching from heaven. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a crumpled napkin. On it, he'd drawn a wobbly Christmas tree and the words Merry Christmas in green crayon. I made this so you wouldn't be sad. Seraphina took the napkin with trembling hands. She stared at it for a long moment, then pressed it to her chest. Thank you, she whispered. This is the best gift I've gotten in years. Bernie appeared in the doorway, his expression grim. We've got a problem. The intruder left equipment behind professional grade, military specification. Whoever sent him has resources. Clinton, Seraphina said, the name bitter on her tongue. Clinton Kessler, my COO. He's been pushing for decisions I don't want to make, accessing files he shouldn't have access to. And now, she looked at Silas. He's the one who signed off on the cost-cutting that killed Leon, and he's been covering it up ever since. Silas pulled the canvas bag from his backpack. Inside, wrapped in layers of protective material, was a USB drive. Leon gave me this before he died. System logs, internal memos, evidence of everything. He wanted me to take it to the authorities, but I couldn't. They came after my wife, first a hit and run that wasn't an accident. After she died, I ran. I've been running for 3 years. And now I'm tired of running. He set the drive on the counter between them. A federal investigator named Dante Reyes has been trying to reopen the case. I was supposed to meet him in Michigan and hand this over. But then the storm hit, and we ended up here. And I found you. Seraphina picked up the drive carefully, as if it might explode. Or you found me. Either way, Clinton knows you have me. That break-in wasn't just about the evidence, it was a warning. He's telling you to back off. Then he doesn't know me very well. Seraphina's jaw set with determination. Leon deserved better than a lie. The families of everyone who died that day deserve better, and I'm going to give it to them. How? Tomorrow night is my foundation's Christmas charity gala. Every major media outlet will be there, along with the board, investors, and Clinton himself. He won't miss it, he loves the spotlight too much. Her eyes hardened. We're going to give him exactly the spotlight he deserves. The next 24 hours moved with the precision of a military operation. Bernie coordinated security. Irene prepared communication strategies. And Dante Reyes reached via encrypted channels positioned federal agents around the gala venue. But for Silas. The most important moments were the quiet ones. He watched Finn build a snowman in the lodge's backyard, the boys' laughter echoing across the pristine white landscape. He saw Seraphina join them, her designer clothes dusted with powder as she helped shape the snowman's head. For a few precious hours, they were just three people enjoying Christmas, not a billionaire, not a fugitive, not a sick child, but something simpler, something like family. "She's different with him," Bernie observed, standing beside Silas on the deck. "Kids have a way of cutting through the noise. It's more than that. I've worked for her for 8 years. Never seen her smile like that." Bernie was quiet for a moment. Leon was the same way. Always found time for people, even when he was climbing the corporate ladder. When he died, something in her died too. And now, Bernie watched Seraphina chase Finn through the snow. Now maybe something's coming back to life. The gala transformed the resort's grand ballroom into a winter wonderland. Crystal chandeliers cast prismatic light across hundreds of guests in formal attire. A string quartet played classical renditions of holiday songs. Champagne flowed. Donations were pledged, and the wealthy congratulated themselves on their generosity. Clinton Kessler worked the room like a politician, his silver hair perfectly styled, his smile never reaching his eyes. He embraced Seraphina for the cameras, leaning in to whisper, "Whatever you're planning, don't. You'll only hurt yourself." "Thank you for your concern," she replied sweetly. "Now, if you'll excuse me, I have a speech to give." Silas watched from the back of the room, Finn asleep in a private lounge nearby with Bernie's most trusted guard watching over him. He'd refused a suit. Wearing instead clean jeans and a button-down shirt, he would not pretend to be something he wasn't. Seraphina took the stage, and the room fell silent. "Thank you all for coming," she began. "This foundation was built on the belief that we have a responsibility to those less fortunate than ourselves, that those with power have an obligation to protect those without it." Her eyes found Clinton's in the crowd. "Tonight, I want to talk about what happens when we fail that obligation." Clinton's smile faltered. 4 years ago, my brother Leon died in what was ruled an industrial accident. I accepted that ruling because I trusted the people around me to tell me the truth." She paused. "I was wrong to trust them." The murmurs started immediately, phones lifting, journalists leaning forward, investors exchanging alarmed glances. "I have evidence that Leon's death was not an accident, that safety systems were deliberately compromised to cut costs, and that when people died as a result, those responsible covered it up." Seraphina's voice grew stronger. "I have the names of those responsible, and I'm turning that evidence over to federal authorities tonight." Clinton burst forward. "This is absurd. Seraphina is clearly unwell, the stress of the holidays, grief over her brother." "The evidence includes internal memos signed by you, Clinton, memos authorizing the exact cost-cutting measures that killed 13 people." The room erupted. Journalists shouted questions. Investors demanded explanations. In the chaos, Clinton grabbed a microphone. "This is a setup. That man," he pointed at Silas, who had moved closer to the stage, "that man is a con artist. I have proof. He staged the entire airport incident to get close to Seraphina. He's been manipulating her grief for money." A video appeared on the gala's display screen's footage from the airport lounge, cleverly edited to make Silas look predatory. His approach to Seraphina calculated rather than desperate. Silas felt the crowd's attention shift to him, felt the weight of judgment and suspicion. This was what Clinton did, turned truth into lies, made victims into villains. But then Finn's voice cut through the noise. "That's not true." The boy had escaped his minder and pushed through the crowd. his face flushed with anger and the remains of his fever. "My dad didn't trick anyone. We were cold and I was sick and he just wanted me to have somewhere warm." Silas moved to grab his son, but Finn wasn't finished. "The lady helped us because she's nice, not because Dad asked for money. He never asks for money, even when we don't have any. He says we have to earn things ourselves." Tears streamed down Finn's face. "My dad is a good person. He's the best person I know." The room went silent. Seraphina knelt beside Finn, pulling him into a gentle hug. "I know, sweetheart. I know he is." Bernie stepped forward with documentation. "The intruder who broke into Ms. Waverly's residence last night left behind equipment military specification, traceable to a security contractor on retainer with Clinton Kessler personally." Irene, her voice steady despite her nerves, added her own testimony. "I have communications showing Clinton directed media manipulation to discredit anyone who questioned the original accident report. I participated in that manipulation, and I'm prepared to testify to everything." Dante Reyes emerged from the crowd, federal badge visible. "Clinton Kessler, you're under arrest for conspiracy to commit fraud, obstruction of justice, and 13 counts of negligent homicide." Clinton tried to run, but there was nowhere to go. As the agents took him into custody, he passed directly beneath the enormous Christmas tree, its lights twinkling merrily. Children's choir recordings playing softly. The contrast between his downfall and the holiday cheer almost poetic in its cruelty. "This isn't over," Clinton shouted as they led him away. "You think you've won, but you have no idea what you've started." Seraphina watched him go, her expression unreadable. Then she returned to the microphone. "I owe you all an apology. Not for tonight. Tonight was necessary. But for the years I spent looking the other way, trusting people I shouldn't have trusted, letting my brother's death go unanswered because facing the truth was too painful." Her voice cracked. "Leon deserved better. The other victims deserved better. And I promise all of you that this company will do better, starting now." The aftermath was messy, as such things always are. Stock prices trembled. Lawyers descended. Media coverage ran the spectrum from sympathetic to savage. Seraphina faced questions about what she knew and when she knew it, about her fitness to lead, about whether the company could survive the scandal. She answered everything honestly, even when honesty hurt. "I didn't know," she told one interviewer. "But I should have. I was so focused on my own grief that I didn't see what was happening right in front of me. That's a failure of leadership I'll spend the rest of my career trying to correct." For Silas, vindication came quietly. Dante Reyes confirmed publicly that he was a protected witness, not a con artist. The edited video was exposed as manipulation. Those who had mocked him at the airport fell silent, and Otis Harrington was notably absent from any subsequent gatherings. Irene resigned her position but found peace in testimony. Bernie remained at his post. His respect for both Silas and Seraphina transformed into something approaching friendship. And Finn's fever finally broke on Christmas morning. Silas found Seraphina in the kitchen at dawn, attempting to make pancakes with the concentration of someone defusing a bomb. "The staff offered to cook," she said without looking up. "I told them I wanted to do it myself." "Any particular reason?" She flipped a pancake lopsided, slightly burned on one edge. "Leon used to make pancakes on Christmas morning. He was terrible at it, but it didn't matter. What mattered was that he tried." She finally met Silas's eyes. "I haven't tried to do anything real in 4 years. I've just been existing, going through the motions, letting other people handle everything while I hid from the pain. And now I want to try again." She gestured at the messy kitchen, the imperfect pancakes, the morning light streaming through windows that looked out on a world made new by fresh snow. Even if I'm terrible at it. Finn appeared in the doorway. His color returned. His eyes bright. He surveyed the kitchen chaos with the wisdom of a child who had seen his father burn many meals. Dad's pancakes are usually pretty bad, too, he offered helpfully. But I eat them anyway because he makes them with love. Seraphina laughed a real laugh, surprised out of her by the boy's earnest diplomacy. Then I hope you'll eat mine, too. Are they made with love? She looked at Silas, then back at Finn. I think they might be. I'm still figuring it out. They ate breakfast together at the massive kitchen island, a billionaire, a fugitive, and a 7-year-old boy, passing syrup and butter, laughing at Seraphina's burnt offerings, talking about everything and nothing. Later, when Finn had gone to explore his presents, Silas found himself standing beside the Christmas tree with Seraphina, outside. The storm had finally passed. Sunlight sparkled on untouched snow, and the world seemed clean and full of possibility. I want to offer you a job, Seraphina said. Silas tensed. I told you, I don't want charity. This isn't charity. It's a job offer. She turned to face him. I need someone to oversee safety protocols across all my holdings. Someone who can't be bought, who won't look the other way, who understands what happens when people in power forget their responsibility to others. I need someone like you. I'm not qualified. You're more qualified than anyone with a degree. You lived it, Silas. You saw what cutting corners costs. You kept evidence for 3 years because you believed the truth mattered more than your safety. That's exactly the kind of person I need. Silas was quiet for a long moment. Through the window, he could see Finn in the snow, chasing a cardinal that had landed on the deck railing. I have conditions. Name them. Finn stays in school where we were headed. Regular kid, regular life. I won't uproot him again. There's an excellent school in Aspen. I'll cover tuition. No arguments. And I make my own decisions about safety protocols. No interference from executives. No pressure to cut corners. If you say a facility isn't safe, we shut it down until it is. Full stop. Silas extended his hand. Then I accept. Seraphina took it, and her grip was warm and firm. Welcome to the team. From the living room came the sound of Finn's delighted shout. He'd found the toy train set Seraphina had quietly arranged to be placed under the tree. She watched the boy's joy with an expression that seemed to hold both sorrow and hope. Thank you, she said quietly, for everything. I should be thanking you. You saved our lives. No. She shook her head. You saved mine. I'd forgotten what it felt like to care about something real. To fight for something that mattered. To have people in my life who weren't there because of what I could do for them. She paused. Finn gave me a gift last night. A napkin with a Christmas tree drawn on it. It's the most valuable thing I own now. Silas thought about all the Christmas mornings he'd struggled through trying to make magic from nothing. Trying to give Finn hope when he had none left himself. He thought about Maria. About the life they'd planned that would never be. About the years of running and hiding and fear. And he thought about this moment standing in a billionaire's lodge, watching his son play beneath a 30-foot Christmas tree, feeling for the first time in years like maybe, just maybe, they had found a place to belong. Can I ask you something? He said. Anything. May my son sit here? He gestured not at a chair, but at the room around them. The life that seemed to be opening up before them. Not just today, not just for Christmas, but always. Seraphina's eyes glistened. She reached out and took his hand, and her touch was gentle, full of promise and possibility. Always, she said. Both of you, for as long as you want to stay. From the living room, Finn called out, Dad.
"Ms. Seraphina, come see. The train goes around the whole tree." They went together, and when Finn reached up to place the star on top of the tree, hoisted onto Silas's shoulders, while Seraphina steadied them both, the moment felt like something sacred. Like healing. Like home. Outside. The sun continued to rise over a world washed clean by snow. And somewhere, in a heaven that might or might not exist, Leon Waverly smiled, knowing that his sister had finally found her way back to the light. "Merry Christmas," Finn whispered, his small hand wrapped around the star. "Merry Christmas," Silas echoed, holding his son close. "Merry Christmas," Seraphina said, and for the first time in 4 years, she meant it. The star gleamed at the top of the tree, and below it. 3 people who had found each other in a storm began to build something new together, not from wealth or obligation or coincidence, but from the simple, powerful truth that everyone deserves a place to sit, a place to belong, a place to call home. And sometimes, all it takes is the courage to ask.